what caused you to think about starting a business in the automotive industry?
Yeah.
I'm guessing, were you working at a car dealership?
I was flipping cars in college.
You're flipping cars.
Yeah.
What was the first car you ever flipped?
It was a 1993 Subaru Outback.
That's a very interesting vehicle.
Yep.
And so you bought this car?
Yep.
What'd you pay for it?
2,300,
What'd you sell it for?
3,500.
How did you sell it?
I was living in Utah at the time, and Utah, a lot of people use today Facebook Marketplace, which didn't exist back then, or Craigslist. Utah has a site called ksl.com, which is their main classified where the majority of transactions happen.
Is that unique to
Utah?
Okay.
Yeah, but 90% or more of peer-to-peer transactions happen on KSL's marketplace.
Who owns that?
It's owned by Deseret Management Corporation, who owns Deseret Digital Media, a bunch of actually church-owned properties.
I kind of gathered that.
Yeah. Yeah, so I bought my first car, sold it, turned around, bought another one, sold it. Next thing you know, in a period of 2 years, I'd bought and sold about 200 cars. So I was buying and selling multiple cars a week.
So you're just curbstoning them is what they call it the industry. You're doing it from your home and just flipping cars, or did you have a lot and a recon department, or what was going on?
I would scan KSL all day long. Was fairly technical. Like I did software development courses in high school. Me and a friend built an app that would scan KSL's site real time. The moment cars were listed that matched our criteria, it would text our phone with a link to the car. I'd immediately call them. I'd say, I'll be there in 10 minutes. I'd show up. I'd pay cash. I was trying to identify cars that were like dirty, that, would be a turnoff to a lot of people if they saw them, that I knew I could take in, clean up, maybe replace the tires, maybe do the oil, maybe replace the windshield wipers.
Were you doing the reconditioning of these vehicles yourself?
Yeah. But it was like, I had a rinky-dink shop that I partnered with that gave me a shop rate, and I would never do more than like 200 to 300 of recon on these cars. And my profit objective was $1,000 a car, regardless of if I paid $2,000 or $10,000. So yeah, I developed this software. I ended up utilizing that technology I licensed it to about 25 car dealerships. So car dealers that wanted to buy more private party vehicles.
So franchise car dealerships or buy here, pay here?
Small Tom, Dick, and Harry, buy here, pay here lots.
All right.
And they were trying to get an edge, and we had created a little bit better efficiency in sourcing these cars. And so one of the dealers that I licensed that software to, I became an investor in. So I had made like, I don't know, 250, 300,000.
So you're a car dealer now?
Yeah. So at 22, I had made a bunch of cash buying and selling cars. Didn't know how to deploy it.
Were you paying taxes on that cash?
I mean, who's asking?
Yeah, I'm just curious, but yeah, keep going.
Not paying taxes. By the way, I had bought and sold, funny story, I bought and sold about 20 cars. And I walk into the DMV one day, and this nice old lady's like, "Hey again, Tyler, good to see you." Like first name basis. I'm like, "Hey, Cheryl," like she's like, "So are you, according to my record, like we don't have your dealer license on file. Do you have that?" And I'm like, "What do you mean? I don't know what you mean." She's like, "Are you a dealer?" I'm like, "No." She's like, "Are you a wholesaler?" I'm like, "No." She's like, "Do you have any?" I'm like, "No." Like I had no idea. Like this went over my head, right? And she's like, in the state of Utah, legally, you can only buy and sell. You can only register 3 cars into your name in a calendar year. And according to my records, you've done like 20. I'm like, okay, what do we do? Like, do I need to pay a fine or something? And, at this point, I'm like balling. I have cash. I'm like, I'll just pay this lady off. She's like, "This is a Class B misdemeanor. I'm supposed to report you to the police, and you're of age. Like, you'll go to jail for this."
That's awesome.
And I'm like, whoa. This is a big deal. Right?
Yeah.
So she said, "Listen," I literally started crying. I'm like 21-year-old kid.
With a load of cash.
Okay. And
now, were you like authentically crying, or was this like a staged cry?
No, I was like actually scared.
You were scared. You were going to jail.
I was like, dude, I'm going to go to jail.
Yeah.
Like I'm a kid. And genuinely, I had no idea about these rules. She goes, "Look, I'm not going to report you, but I flagged you in the system. Like you can't do this anymore. You got to get a dealer license." So she gave me this packet, and I started reading through this packet. Realized I didn't want to be a dealer, so I hung it up. Went back to school, and 3 days go by, and I'm like, dude, I miss the rush of like finding the deal and buying and selling and making money. So I went and knocked on a bunch of dealerships' doors to see if one of them would let me use their license. And this one dealer I found, he's like, "Yeah, dude, you can use my license. It's $100 a car. You can do as many as you want." So now I had to start registering them through a dealer, which meant sales tax and registration and the whole deal. Long story short, ended up developing software, bought and sold a couple hundred cars, got really good at sourcing these vehicles. One of my dealers was a salvage rebuilt lot. He couldn't get bank financing, floor plan financing to buy cars. And I had all this money and I said, hey, I'll give you a loan, a couple $100,000. And
so you're floor planning cars.
so now I'm floor planning cars at 22 for a buy here, pay here, salvage lot.
Were you giving this guy a fair interest rate?
I charged him 10% a month on my money.
That's a pretty good IRR. That's a pretty good IRR.
Which,
and it was cash.
It was cash. And by the way, I didn't know if that was good deal, bad deal. I was so naive.
Yeah, it was a good deal, by the way.
Yeah, I know now, right? But yeah, he paid, like, his business did really well. We were able to increase his lot from 25 vehicles to 50, like overnight.
Yeah.
And he was making $4 or $5 profit on these cars every deal. And by the way, spending $4,000 on them, right? So he's making 100% profit margin on these deals. And so that process led me to, I would see every car that we bought and sold. So every car that he used my money to floor, I would get a record of it. And then I would see when it sold and how much profit we made. Sometimes we'd lose money on a deal. And I'd say, hey, Caesar, what happened here? And he'd be like, oh, well, it was a white Jeep. And I thought white Jeeps, I bought one 2 weeks ago and I made $4,000. So I figured I'll buy another one. And I'm like, do we have any other data around like why we're buying the cars that we buy? He's like, no, I just know how to buy, right? So I started asking dealers, like, what data do you use to buy and sell cars? They're like, my gut, my intuition, right? And so the two things I learned through this process: one, dealers did not utilize data to price vehicles at all. It was all gut and intuition. Two, every time we bought a private party vehicle, it made more money. It was faster to frontline ready. It was cleaner. It was more unique. It checked all the boxes that buying a car from an auction did not.
Yeah.
These were way better cars. And so I thought, man, there's got to be a way to solve this. So I went and joined 2 early stage companies over the next 7 years. One of them we took public, a company called Domo. Second company was called Higher View, which was acquired by the Carlyle Group, a big PE. And then I launched Auto Hall, which was a car dealership. And I did that because I wanted to operate and run my own car dealer. We incubated Drivably there. And I went out to solve 2 problems. How do I utilize better data to help dealers more accurately price used cars to make more profit? And 2, how do I enable dealers to buy consumer vehicles as a sustainable source of inventory for their lot? And we did that, and the rest is history.
So your customer, were they buy here, pay here dealerships primarily and used car dealers?
At Drivably?
Yeah.
No, predominantly franchise dealers.
Okay.
So a lot of people, there's a misconception that franchise dealers don't have a used car focus, but the last 10 years especially, franchise dealers have an extremely heavy used car focus, right? So
historically, it's been the most powerful profit center
that's right.
that they have.
Yep.
There's a lot of players in that space, right? I mean, you've got Auto, you've got many other players that help dealers with understanding pricing, inventory, and buying it. So, were you in a competitive marketplace when you were in the franchise realm?
Totally, yeah. And Auto was our biggest competitor, and and these guys, Dale Pollock's the founder of that's a machine.
He is a machine.
Really, really good entrepreneur. And part of Cox Automotive, which is a conglomerate that's tough to go to battle against. And so we realized that, and we also realized
what was your competitive advantage over Auto and Dale's product, and the powerhouse he had of having Cox and Manheim behind him? What did you do that allowed you to go out and compete?
Our biggest thing was like, we took a much more sort of data-driven approach than Auto, right? So Auto, what they did was they would aggregate a bunch of market data. So what's listed for sale currently, what's selling at the auctions, for example. And then dealers could match that data, that market data, against a vehicle to make a more informed decision, right? Which to me, that's inherently flawed, because it was teaching all dealers, regardless of how big or small or what brands you have as a franchise, et cetera, that they needed the same cars for the same price and would make the same amount of profit.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing specific to the dealership. So we thought that those models were inherently flawed. They weren't even models. We thought that approach was.
So you'd model
flawed.
Your product for the specific dealership.
Yeah. So we built data models that would ingest historical transaction data inside of the dealership
Yeah.
to say what actually works here. If you're a Toyota dealer and next door is a Ford dealer, you don't actually need the same cars because, by the way, Toyota, you can CPO used Toyotas and get $1,000 on average more per car. By the way, Ford, the way that you sell vehicles and your sales methodology is very different than Toyota. Therefore, these will work better, right? So we took that approach. We ended up finding out that all businesses pivot a lot, right? And we ended up finding out that to go and get that data at scale was going to be expensive and time consuming, et cetera, right? So we ended up pivoting during COVID to focus on becoming a consumer vehicle acquisition company. We bought a company based out of Montreal in the middle of COVID in May of 2020 for probably several million less than we could have 6 months earlier because of the market condition. And we took a big bet. And next thing you know, COVID, we had an all-time high consumer demand for vehicles, all-time low supply of cars. And we were kind of caught in the middle of a perfect storm. Dealers desperately needed inventory. And we had a unique way to go and get it, which was from consumer driveways.